Okay, so welcome to today's episode where we're chatting to women who have created and designed a life that they love. So today I am chatting with Claire. Now, Claire and I have been friends for a long time, and we recently caught up in person, I guess maybe a year ago, 6 months ago, I can't remember. And when Claire told me what she'd been up to and what she was going to be doing, I was really blown away. I thought, that's so amazing that you're making a career change and following something that you love. And I wanted to jump on the podcast with her today so that she can talk through this experience, because I think once you hear Claire's story, you'll be inspired to go, oh, wow, maybe I can do something like that. Maybe I can follow some bubbles of joy that I love. Maybe I can start to incorporate more things in my life that I love. Okay, so we talk about a lot about career and jobs in this podcast, but obviously this applies to all areas of manifestation, whether you're looking for more of a lifestyle, whether you're looking for love, whether you're looking for money and relationships, it doesn't matter. It's the principles that are the same. And so I wanted to introduce you to Claire and say, thank you, Claire, for coming on the podcast. Do you want to introduce yourself and say a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on your little podcast series. So I'm Claire. I am 55, soon to be 56. I'm from England. Apparently, I have a bit of a twang, Aussie twang, according to my English family, but none of the Aussies agree with that. I've been in Australia for 15 years. We moved over on a bit of a spontaneous job offer that my husband had. We've got two sons. I've got a new daughter-in-law. We've got a neurotic Cocker Spaniel. We're empty nesters. And yeah, I had been working in cancer nursing and cancer and palliative care for 32 years until this year.
Now, I'm going to put in something here because she says, I was working in cancer care, blah, blah. Claire was one of the top cancer nurses in the UK, one of the top 10 cancer nurses in the UK. Now, the UK have a lot more people and a lot more nurses than we do in Australia. And so I think this is something that shouldn't be understated. So that is a bit of an accomplishment. So don't downplay that one. And then Claire moved from the UK to Australia, and I met her when she was working at the Cancer Council. So we were in totally different areas. Claire was in cancer care and community support, and I was in fundraising. So totally different areas. But she came in, and after moving your family from the other side of the world, she came to Australia. And I thought, wow, what a challenge. This tells me this is someone who is like taking on life and is keen to experience life, because you don't move your family across the world unless you are prepared for some challenges, but you're chasing something more. You're like, I'm here for the experience. And then Claire and I instantly clicked, and we had some really fun times at the Cancer Council working together. We have, I will share this one great story because it is very fun. So when we worked together, Claire and I both headed up our own team. So I had the fundraising team and Claire had community support. And we would have to go into the HR introductions when new people were coming in. We did an induction session, okay? So this was a whole day induction session. And Claire and I would each have a 10 or 15-minute slot to talk about our area. So I would come in and talk about fundraising, and then Claire would come in and she would talk about her area. And this went on for probably, I guess, maybe 6 months. And we came in at the same time every month. I think we had these. And so I had listened to Claire's talk for 6 months, and she had listened to my talk for 6 months. And I'd been there a little bit longer than Claire. So I knew sort of the lay of the land. And I said to Claire one day, I said, why don't you do my talk and I'll do yours? And she was like, oh, are you sure that we should? I don't think we should do that. I was like, yeah, fine. So I went into this induction and I said, look, I'm the head of fundraising, but I'm going to do the community services talk today, and Claire's going to do my talk. And when Claire said, okay, she went up and did it, it really showed me that she had that spark inside her. And it was such a great, I guess, core memory when you have a friendship and you have that sort of core memory that you can both go back to. I thought it was really lovely. And I knew that she was somebody that I wanted to have in my life after that story. So that's just a little bit of a background about Claire. But yes, she came to the Cancer Council after moving from the UK. And do you want to just give us a bit of what did you sort of have to overcome to come to the UK? You said that you moved out for your husband's job, but was that an easy thing for you guys to do? Or did you think, I'm just going to sail into another job and I'll just continue on life? How was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, our kids were 5 and 10, so I guess at the time they were, I wasn't really thinking about what I what I was going to do. Um, hubby had a job to come to. I think the really interesting thing was it all started because we'd actually just bought our dream home. So, we'd bought this 3-story Victorian terrace, and it was going to be our the home where we were going to bring our kids up. It was on a road that I used to walk past on the way to school, and I used to think in my head, one day I'm gonna have one of these houses. And then I moved away, I lived overseas for years, and ended up coming back, bought this house, blah blah blah. And then 18 months later, Phil got an email through at his work, and it said, wasn't to him, it was a organizational wide memo that said that there was opportunities overseas in 4 different countries. And he flicked it to me at my work. And he's not a talker, but he sends emails. And I read this email and I typed a few words, which was opportunity is not a lengthy visitor, um, and flicked it back. And then basically he phoned up and he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, find out more. And then within 4 weeks, he had a job offer in Brisbane, and we
Oh,
didn't really talk about it. We're not big, like we don't kind of analyze everything. And then literally he took the job offer, and that night I said to him, we haven't even had to talk about it. We're brushing our teeth in the bathroom, and we were like, and I went, Bill, it was a big move. We haven't even talked about it. And he said, well, you want to go, don't you? And I went, yeah. And he went, well, we'll go then. So we did, and I think we were very, very fortunate because the job offer was we had to stay for 2 years, and after that, it. I think if somebody had said we're emigrating, I wouldn't have been. We wouldn't have been so relaxed about it. But because we knew we just needed to, his obligation was to stick with the job for 2 years. Um, we just saw it as an adventure, and that's what we said to the kids. We were like, "This is scary, but it's exciting." And every day, I got the older one who could read and write. The younger one he wasn't kind of at that space, but I used to get the kids every day in that month to say, excited, nervous, where are we? And we used to draw a little chart of where we were on the excited and where we were on the nervous,
yep.
and watching the excited get bigger than the nervous the
Yeah.
the closer it got.
Love
Yeah,
that.
so we just saw it as an adventure, really.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I definitely think,
Yeah,
I mean, I love travel and living overseas and all of those things. So I always think that it's such a good thing to do because, travel is is one of the only things that you can buy that makes you richer, really, all the experience and stuff.
yeah,
But it's nice that you had that little almost safety net of 2 years and then we can go back. I think I
yeah,
did something similar when I left the Cancer Council. I left for a year on my annual leave, and I thought, well, I'll be back in a year, and I've got that safety net there to come back to. I never went back, but it was really a nice thing to have to know that I could go back if I wanted to. So that was really good.
exactly.
Yeah. So you
Yeah,
came here, you worked in cancer care, as we know. Personally, I think that it's incredible that you work in palliative care because that is a very tricky space, I believe. I don't think it's something that I could do. I mean, you and I worked at opposite ends of the cancer spectrum. Um, and so you've done that, and now you're moving into something else. So what is it that you're moving into now? What's your new thing?
yeah. So I am spending all my days now on working in the midlife health space for women.
Okay.
So I am transitioning my skill set and doing some further studies, and have been doing some further studies for the last few years, really, because I've just been in this space for my own, for my own, to feed my own passion.
Yep.
But it's kind of now morphed into a business, or just starting my business, as a midlife health coach with specializing in menopause and after cancer treatment.
Nice. Look, that's a massive space to be in. And when you and I started talking, when we met face to face 6 months ago, I started thinking, oh my gosh, does that mean that that's coming up for me, right? Because this is something that I wasn't even in the headspace of, I'm 44 and I thought, oh no, that menopause thing happens like when you're 50. And then when you and I started talking, it was like, oh, you mean I should be thinking about this now, and I could be doing things to make this easier? Like, this is not something that has been ever on my radar. And if it hasn't been on my radar, then I'm imagining that there's lots of other women who it's not on their radar either. And it's almost like something that we don't talk about. So is that something that
Yeah.
you're addressing with your work?
Yeah, that's the whole reason. Besides it being my own personal interest, that yeah, the absolute reason for it is that there is a lack of understanding.
Mm,
This season of life is really, really challenging, and a lot of that is because of what's happening to our bodies as we're entering into perimenopause. And, I think we tend to think, or I did, and I've done like worked in nursing for years, but I thought that ovaries, like estrogen, ovaries and estrogen, that's it. That's kind of estrogen's role.
mm,
But estrogen has this huge role, like it has this systemic role right throughout the body.
yeah.
And when things start to change in our, 40s,
Yeah.
that has a systemic effect on our body, and also not just physically but emotionally, on our brain function as well. And it was only so I had to have my ovaries removed like that in my mid 40s.
Yeah.
um and because I'm like really into reading evidence and reading research articles and things, I kind of and I knew I had to have my ovaries removed. I went on a bit of a deep dive and I learned heaps. So I kind of went in with my eyes open, with my eyes more open, I guess, than many, because I knew it was going to happen. Like, it wasn't a gradual thing creeping up on me.
Yeah.
But what I learned, like, I was like, holy moly, I didn't even know, like, half. I
Yeah.
didn't know any of it really.
Yeah.
I knew that it was end of menstrual cycles, and that's about as much as I understood. And I knew about hot flushes. There's so much more to it than that. And
Yeah.
then when all of that much more of it hit me,
Yeah.
it really knocked me, like,
No.
emotionally. And
Yeah.
I was dealing with emotions, anxiety that I'd never had in my whole life. My capacity to be little Miss Calm in a crisis has like eluded me, and I was like having little, my moods weren't as good, and yeah, it just had a massive impact on me. And I thought, there's so much there's so many women that are struggling in this season of life,
Yep.
and the information that's out there is really confusing.
Yeah.
And we have choices, like you were just saying. Like, if you can get ahead of the curve and it's coming,
Yeah.
and you can get you can adopt some lifestyle practices, because it's not all about hormone therapy, then you can really mitigate some of these awful effects that our parents' generation had no idea we could do anything about. And a lot of women that are in the midst of perimenopause, or heading into menopause, um, are really, really struggling. And I just want to help them
Yeah.
to make some, to give them the right information so that they
Yeah.
can make choices about you know, how they manage those symptoms, or even just like how they prepare,
Yeah.
particularly perimenopausal women, how they prepare for what's to come. And
So
knowing
what
when
would you
we
say?
know, we're empowered.
So what would the age is perimenopausal? This was kind of a new term to me. I mean, I'd heard it obviously, but I hadn't thought about what sort of age are we talking about for perimenopausal?
Yeah. So most women will start their perimenopause in their 40s.
Okay.
Some women, it might be early 40s, because some people can have like an early menopause.
Okay.
But the menopause, so perimenopause is, if we look at it physiologically,
Hmm.
what our ovaries have got masses of eggs, and we're actually born with those eggs, which are what gets released for each of our menstrual cycles. And then somewhere in our 40s, typically in our 40s, those eggs start depleting, and that we don't have, so our menstrual cycles start to change. And that our hormones, which have always been, the cycles, like
Yeah.
our estrogen, kind of, if you look at estrogen on a chart during our childbearing years, it goes like this. But as those eggs start to become depleted, and our body's like, heck, I don't like. Our
Right.
brain actually starts the menstrual cycle off. We have chemicals that, like hormones. Hormones communicate to our ovaries to release the eggs, and then there's not enough to get released. And
Yeah.
then what happens with this steady thing is it goes
Whoa. Okay.
like this.
It's like a roller
And it
coaster.
goes like this until you don't have any menstrual cycles. But this
Yeah.
going like all over the place, and it can go on for years.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily linear. It can be up and then it can go like this, and then it go up and then it go
Yeah.
down, and it's all over the place. So the perimenopause in our 40s, which is leading up to menopause when we haven't had any more cycle, when we don't have any more cycles,
Yeah.
um, can last 2 years. For some people, it can last 10 years. It can start in your mid 40s, and it's the most erratic time of our lives
Yeah.
for our female hormones. So our
Yeah.
estrogen, progesterone.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm,
and knowing that estrogen has a function way beyond our ovaries
mm,
helps us to understand that why we might be feeling things are changing, or that, our brain might not be as functioning in the same way. We
yeah.
might even start with like hot flushes and stuff. And actually most women, so it's better to call this whole thing the menopause transition, which captures perimenopause and menopause, and then, going into after menopause, like post-menopause, because it's a transition that's not it's different for everybody. No two people are the same.
Yeah.
And we can't forget, when we talk about menopause, we can't forget about perimenopause, because that's actually when most women are struggling.
Yeah.
The symptoms, when we've not had a menstrual cycle for a year, that's
Yeah.
actually menopause. So menopause is a one day. It's the day 1 year after our last period.
Okay.
So it's diagnosed like retrospectively.
Okay.
So you're not menopausal until
Okay.
you've not had a period or postmenopausal until you've not had a period for 12 months. And
Okay.
then at that 12 months, those hormones, the estrogen, progesterone specifically, they
Yeah.
kind of flatline, and then they just like go up. They drop off to about, less than 80 to about 80% of what we had during our reproductive years.
Okay. So there's two things
So
you said there. There's one is that you talked about the emotional side of it, which something I guess I wasn't aware of. I knew that your cycle will stop and you'll have the hot flushes, but I wasn't so aware of the emotional changes. But I guess if you think about it, like you have puberty and then childbearing years and then menopause, is it just the other end of the bell curve? So all of those hormones that you had during puberty, it's almost like you're doing it at the other end. Is that right? So that's affecting. I mean, I remember as a teenager, all of those feelings and those thoughts and emotions that were swirling around. So I imagine it's something similar to that.
yeah, perfect example. And some people do call it puberty in reverse. And
Ugh.
it's really useful to think
We're
about
gonna do
that,
it again.
because, well, it kind of is. I mean, yeah, that when you look at what happens to estrogen through our life cycle, it peaks at puberty, and then we can get those similar peaks during perimenopause, but it's also dropping, and then
Okay.
it's going back to what it was. And for some women, their periods can really, really slow down, but for some women, their periods can like ramp up, like they can have more bleeding because things are so erratic.
Okay.
But if we think about, I think nearly everybody, if you said to anybody what's one of the symptoms of menopause, they go hot flushes.
Yeah.
So it's really useful to think, well, why a hot flush? What's the trigger for a hot flush?
Yeah.
Well, we've got this in our brain, we've got the hypothalamus, which is the body the temperature regulator for our body. It's like the body's thermostat, and it doesn't function as well because it hasn't got the estrogen getting to the receptors. So
Okay.
it's got estrogen receptors on it, and the
Yeah.
estrogen helps to regulate it. So if you think that's in our brain,
Yeah.
then it's good to realize actually there's lots of other things going on in our brain, in
Yeah.
different parts of our brain, that have estrogen receptors on those parts of the brain. And
Yeah.
if the estrogen's not getting to those receptors, then it's not going to function the same way.
Yeah.
So things like mood changes, anxiety, depression, or just mood changes. And if classically, if women have not had those mood changes all their life, and then they're starting to get that in their mid 40s,
Yeah.
but they're not getting any other, they
Symptoms.
haven't associated mood changes and their change in periods, and they haven't kind of linked them two together.
Yeah.
It's good to understand that actually estrogen plays a role in our brain function, because
Yeah.
it affects memory as well.
Yeah.
So,
It's
and
the whole brain
it
book.
affects so many organs, so many organs.
Yeah. But so tell me then, is there surely there has to be some things that we can do to combat this, is there? Or is this something that we all just have to ride out? Please tell me no.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it depends on what the symptoms are
Yeah.
and what you can do about it. Um, I personally think that one of the best things we can do is, if we know it's going to happen, then we can tell people around us. So
Okay.
again, me being me, really fortunate, not fortunate that I had to have my ovaries removed at all, don't recommend that. But fortunate that I'm a bit nerdy. I'm a bit of a, you know, sciencey nerd. So
Yeah.
I read stuff. And I remember the day before I went in to have my ovaries removed, I remember saying to my husband and my kids, was making dinner, I said, I learned today that you can have really, really bad mood swings when you don't have your ovaries and you don't have estrogen. So if I get really, really cranky, it's not me.
Yeah.
It's my estrogen is the factor, you know. So I think if you understand that's going to happen and you can tell people around you, they're going to give you a bit of grace, I think. Um,
Sure.
so I guess that's really important. Not that it mitigates it,
Yeah.
but then a lot of the symptoms like hot flushes, you can't you can't necessarily take it away, but there are some things that trigger it. So for me and for many women, coffee makes it worse. Um, um, Alcohol makes it worse. You know, being in a hot room makes it worse. Hot weather makes it worse. Um, there's all kinds of things that because everybody's different. It's
Yeah.
understanding what's your symptom and what can you
Okay.
do about it. Of course, yeah. I mean, the evidence is really, really showing that there's a lot of lifestyle changes we can make
Okay.
that have, just as good an impact as hormone therapy. So for some people, if symptoms are really, I mean, hormone therapy is normally given not necessarily more so in menopause, like closer to menopause than necessarily perimenopause. But it depends. It depends on, an individual and what their risk factors are
Yeah.
and how bad their symptoms are as to whether hormone therapy is a go. But I'm not going to discuss that because it's so individual and based on personal situation.
Yeah.
But there's definitely lifestyle factors that we can change. So, mindfulness is great for the brain. And I think just giving ourselves grace.
Yeah. And do you find that when you say tell people about it, do you find that people do? I mean, I wonder if this has something to do with age, because again, I'm 44, but it's not really talked about in my circles. Do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't know, but I'm sure that if I did start talking to my friends, they'd be like, oh yeah, this has happened, or do you know what I mean? It's just I wonder why it is that we seem to not want to talk about it, because it's something that happens to everyone. Well, sorry, all
Exactly right.
not. Do you know what I mean? It's something that we have to, I think, make more space for in our conversations and in our world, is that this is going to happen and you don't have to do this alone, and you are not alone. There is half of the world's population who are doing this. So yeah.
That's exactly right. And I
Yeah.
think that it's definitely changing. Like if you put menopause in Instagram, there's lots and lots of people talking about it.
Yeah.
The challenge is that there's a lot of people, you know, creating confusion and
Yeah.
telling you that you can get a cream that's going to take away, your wrinkles or whatever, or you can get,
Yeah.
I mean, you can get some amazing products to help. And let's put it out there, sometimes women have really like discomfort with intimacy, a lot of urinary vaginal changes, pelvic floor issues at this time. And there are things out there, and that's a really hard thing to talk about, but it's really hard for women
Yeah.
who suddenly, it's hard to be intimate with your husband because of the pain,
Yeah.
um, or your partner, or, whatever it is. And I think it's really important that we do have those conversations so that,
Mm.
people can get the right support, because there is actually support available. And
Yeah.
there are things that we can do about most things.
Okay. So
Yeah.
moving on a little bit from that, you obviously are very passionate about this, and I know that you're going to be successful because this is something that you are very, very well studied in, and you have all of the qualifications, excuse me. I just want to ask you if there's any sort of challenges that you're coming up against in creating this business and doing this, and, you know, has it been worth it for you to do this? Because I personally know myself that going into business can be challenging, but you're going into a business where not only have you not done a business for yourself before, but you're going in with a challenging topic. So I was just thinking, surely there must be some things you've had to overcome to get where you are now.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, so much. But I think the biggest challenges are all internal me challenges.
Yeah.
Actually, just when you said something, then you said, I can't remember what you said, but something came to my mind when you said that about, is it worth it? Well, it's interesting because I have lost my income to do this, and in this season, I've said to my husband, can you give me 6 months, like to give me some pocket money and like an
Yeah.
allowance, until I can start earning. And I think for me, that's going to be, it's interesting. Is it going to be worthwhile? It's going to be worthwhile whether I earn money or not. And that's my challenge because, my husband knows me very well, obviously, and he knows that I would do this for nothing.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a challenge. Like me asking for something for me is, and having confidence, like to have an exchange of service that I can offer, and that's a massive challenge for me.
Yeah.
But I have to, I have to be realistic. I can't be out at like I'm investing a lot in it, and I should not put myself too much out of pocket for that, if at
Yeah.
all. The big challenge I think for me is, stories in my head, like who do I think I am? Um,
But I think
why would
that
I do this at this age?
everybody
Um,
has that.
lack of self-belief and confidence. Who's going to want to speak to me about this? And I think the biggest challenge is biggest challenge is, which is a whole midlife health issue in and of itself, is giving myself permission to invest in me and to
Yes.
do something for me.
Yes.
That's very challenging.
Yes. Isn't it funny that, you know, I see women who go into a business that all of the skills, all of the professional side of it is not a problem at all. They have all the right skills. They have all, they can, you know, attract all the clients. It's all the mindset stuff. It's all the inner work that has to be done no matter what the business is, you know. And I guess from my side, I mean, I can tell you, A, that you're not alone, that like almost every woman in business that I know goes through something like this. And it's simply, I mean, I like to look at it as, how much do you want this, and are you prepared to do the inner work and go against the resistance, you know? But by you saying that you would do it for free anyway tells me that you love what you do, and if that's the case, then you'll make it work because you love it, you know. So there's people who say do something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. It's a bit like that, in that if you would get up every day and do this without getting paid, then you're in the right gig, you know. So I think everything will follow as long as you can remember that and connect with why you want to do it.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've been a couple of months just, preparing everything for well, more than that, but I've been spending like whole days and evenings
Yeah.
doing this stuff. And I was at a conference last week all with health coaches, and I'm like, somebody said to me, are you enjoying it? I'm like, I'm loving it. And husband's in the background going, yeah, but she's not earned anything. But I am absolutely, like, I am loving learning
Yeah.
and developing programs, and preparing information sessions where I can share
Yeah.
knowledge that is going to help women to be less confused and empower them
Yeah.
to make choices. It's not up to me what individual choices people make,
Yeah.
but if I can give them information to empower them to make a good choice, or a choice that works for them,
Yeah, exactly.
yay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I think it's so important that we do follow the things that we love, because that's what lights us up. Like, even when you're talking about it now, I can see in your face, everything lights up, and, it's really, you're really passionate about it. So I think it's really important to remember that. Okay. Okay. So we're just chatting about some of the things that you've had to overcome. And yeah, like I say, if you're passionate about something, it comes through in everything. So I really think that that's the area that you've got to focus on, focusing on doing what you love, and then everything else will come through. Yeah. Because I mean, you've had to overcome some challenges. So like moving to Australia was challenging, and changing, organizations is challenging when you're in a new country and doing something totally different. So if you can move your whole family to the other side of the world, I'm pretty sure that you can do this, something that you have all the skills and qualifications for.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. And I think, I think we're our own biggest critic, aren't we, sometimes?
Yeah.
But I also think that, this season of life is, I think it's actually the perfect time to venture into something, like create something new, if the passion's there, because we have experience and wisdom and insight, and I wish that somebody had been there for me a little bit ahead of the game to guide me through this, through my midlife years. And I hope that that's what I can do for other people.
So I was listening to a podcast with Jane Fonda. I really like Jane Fonda. I've been listening to a lot of her interviews lately, and she describes it as her, what did she say? Her second act, that there were 3 acts in her life, and she was in the middle of her, well, this is our second act, and then you from 60 onwards is. And I thought that was amazing. She was like, no, there's just different times in my life, and what do I want to do in this act? What do I want to achieve? And I was like, oh yeah, that's a really great way to think about it, because society can tell us that as we age, then we have less value in society, and that's just not true. We actually have more, because we've gained all of this experience, and that's what we should be passing on, and helping other people to go through this and make that journey a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my generation, we've never had so much information at our fingertips.
Yeah.
And my mum's generation, they had no clue. Like, one of the things that really, really motivates me now is I thought it was inevitable that as we, hit 40, 50, 60, we lose muscle, we lose bone density, and that there's nothing you can do about it. My own mum, when she was 70, she had like a massive, she banged, and I think she fell over, but she had a massive fracture in a humerus, and because her bones were 70-year-old bones. And we've always assumed that that's inevitable, but now we have so much information, there's so much evidence, and so many great role models out there. Like, if you don't know, train with Joan. So Joan is a 77-year-old lady, I think, who is like, she had chronic disease, she was overweight, and now she's like lifting weights, and she's super duper amazing role model for any like woman my age. And it's not inevitable. It's not inevitable that our last decade will be stuck in a nursing home, or that the current 80% of women over 65 that have chronic disease. That's not an inevitable future for us. It does not have to look like that. But there's how we choose to live our life in our 40s and 50s will determine what it's going to look like in our 80s and 90s. And I think that just motivates me personally so much. And it's not for everybody, but we do have choices, and we have some great information and evidence out there now.
And so is that what you're going to be teaching and talking about with your new Healthy in the Middle? Because that's the sort of stuff that will make a difference. Is that what you're teaching people, or how is that working?
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a few things. There's going to be like two
Streams?
two activities. One is, yes, providing information through information sessions on Zoom. And then the other will be doing some health coaching. And I'll be doing health coaching in a group, where that might be, a group of midlife women, and doing some health coaching around how to, like, what are the priorities for us in terms of health and lifestyle, health and wellness in our 50s, 60s. And that as a group work will be, virtual group over a set number of weeks where we'll share some information, but then individuals can take that to do with whatever they wish.
Yeah.
And then I'll do some one-on-one health coaching with those people who really want to, um, have somebody to support them on their journey. But health coaching is not about setting, exercise programs. It's about supporting women who know they want to make a change, but they're just not quite sure how to do that,
Yeah.
and helping them to find the choices that are going to work for them,
Yeah.
and then supporting them on that journey. So there's a few things in the pipeline, but my first information series will be starting next week.
Yay. Look, I think there's going to be a lot of benefits, especially for the group coaching sessions. And if you end up doing in-person ones, because imagine walking into a room with a group of other women who are doing and going through exactly the same thing as you. I mean, I can imagine that there's going to be some, good friendships formed based off that, because then you found your community, you found people who are going through the same thing as you. I think that's
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's so important, isn't it? Because I think, like you said before, about being confident or having a lack of self-belief, we're all the same.
yeah,
And like, we know that all of us are gonna, I mean, I've got a friend and she just turned 60 and she didn't have any menopause symptoms.
wow.
But yeah, she didn't even know that she was like in menopause.
Wow.
But that's apparently there's about 2% of women that are like that. So that means there's, 98% of us that are having some symptom, and something like half of us are having symptoms that are causing us distress and are impacting our quality of life,
Yeah.
especially when we don't sleep because we're having night sweats or whatever. So I think just putting women together to have these conversations and get some support and hear what worked for you. It's not necessarily about telling people what to do, but it's just sharing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting to us and being so open, because I know that doing something new can be really scary, but I think personally, I'm very proud of you, and I think that it's going to be amazing. And, when I come back to you in another year and say, hey, will you jump on? I'm sure you'll be like, I'm so busy now. I've got so many clients and my coaching business is thriving. So I'm just getting in now and saying, I think it's amazing and congratulations on doing it, because yeah, if it's making you happy, then that's the best thing.
Thanks, Hayley. No, and I will always have time for you, and I love what you're doing as well. And yeah, I love your encouragement and your belief in other people, and I think that's partly, that's really helped me as well to get on out there. I know when we met up recently, you were just like, just go out there, just do it, and it really, like, you give me a kick up the butt that I probably need. So
Yeah.
I'll be asking for more kicks up the butt over the next few months for sure.
Anytime, anytime. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you, everybody who's watching or listening to this. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you've been able to take something away from it. I'm going to put all Claire's details in the boxes on Spotify and YouTube, so you can find her. And I do encourage you to find her and to follow her on Instagram. She shares a lot of great information. So even if you're not ready to join a program, please start to follow and just gain that information as to what's coming up, especially if you're female. And if you're male, even more so, then you can know what's going on with the females who are around you. But thank you for listening,
Yeah,
and we will see you again on the next podcast. Thank you.